I never told my son about my $40,000 monthly salary. Not because I was ashamed of it, but because I never wanted money to define the relationship between a mother and her child. To Marcus, I was just Mom, the woman who woke up before sunrise, who left the apartment carrying a worn-out lunchbox and came home late with tired eyes. The woman who smiled when he succeeded, who quietly paid his college tuition, who cooked with whatever was left in the fridge. He never asked how I managed everything on a secretary's income, and I never corrected him. I let him believe that I was ordinary, because sometimes silence protects what love can't explain. For 20 years, I was a senior executive at a multinational corporation. I signed million-dollar contracts, handled crisis meetings that decided the fate of entire departments. I stood in boardrooms full of men in suits and never once trembled. Yet, when it came to my son, I couldn't bring myself to say, I'm not just an employee. Why? Because pride is a strange thing. It can make you stay quiet for all the right reasons, and all the wrong ones too. The call. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Marcus. My heart always lifted when I saw his name, but that day his voice was different, hesitant, almost rehearsed. Mom, he began, I need to ask you a favor. A favor. Not how are you, not did you eat. Just a favor. Simone's parents are visiting from overseas, he continued. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. We're having dinner on Saturday at Le Magnifique. Please come. Le Magnifique. The kind of restaurant where the menu doesn't show prices, where the napkins are embroidered with gold thread. Something in his tone made me uneasy. Do they know anything about me? I asked quietly. There was a pause. Then he said it, the words that sliced through me like thin paper cuts. I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple. Simple. That single word carried a world of assumptions, small, ordinary, forgettable. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Okay, Marcus, I said. I'll be there. When I hung up, the silence in my apartment felt heavier than ever. The ticking clock on the wall seemed to mock me. Simple. My own son ashamed of me. Not because I failed him, but because I refused to show off. That night, as I sat on the couch surrounded by furniture older than he was, I made a decision. If my son wanted the world to think I was a poor, naive woman, then that's exactly who I would be. Saturday came faster than I expected. I stood before my closet, running my fingers across the fabrics, tailored suits, crisp white shirts, dresses that whispered authority. Then I reached for something else, a light gray shapeless dress, wrinkled and faded. The kind that said, I've given up on trying. Old shoes. No jewelry. Not even a watch. My reflection in the mirror looked like a woman the world had forgotten. Perfect. I tied my hair in a loose ponytail, grabbed a canvas tote bag, and looked around my apartment one last time. Everything in it, the modest furniture, the aging TV, the tiny balcony, spoke of a life lived within limits. No one could ever guess that behind these walls sat a woman with investments in 3 countries, a silent owner of 2 companies, and a bank account her own son couldn't imagine. When I stepped out, the city lights greeted me with their usual indifference. The taxi ride to the restaurant felt endless. My heart raced, not from fear, but from a quiet anticipation, the same feeling I used to have before closing a major deal. This time, however, the stakes were higher. This wasn't about business. This was about love, dignity, and the truth hidden behind silence. The restaurant. The taxi stopped in front of Le Magnifique. Warm lights spilled onto the pavement. A doorman in white gloves opened the door. Inside, everything shimmered, crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, polished marble floors. And then I saw them. Marcus stood beside a long table near the window. His suit fit him perfectly. He looked successful, confident. Everything I had hoped for him. But his eyes darted around nervously, searching for me. Next to him was Simone, my daughter-in-law. Beautiful, poised, dressed in a cream-colored gown that must have cost more than my entire disguise. She looked toward the entrance with a tight smile, the kind you wear when you're worried someone will embarrass you. And then there were her parents, Veronica and Franklin. They sat like royalty, Veronica in an emerald green dress sparkling with sequins and diamonds, Franklin in a tailored navy suit, his silver watch catching the light. They looked at me the moment I stepped through the door. I could feel their gaze, curious, assessing, slightly condescending. Marcus's smile faltered when he saw me. "Mom," he said, walking over quickly, his voice low. "You made it." I smiled gently. "Of course, dear." He looked me up and down, from my wrinkled dress to my old shoes, and I saw it in his eyes, disappointment, embarrassment, maybe even regret. When we reached the table, Simone's mother barely nodded. "Mrs. Hilda, how lovely to meet you," she said, her voice sweet but hollow. "Please, just Hilda," I replied. Franklin offered a brief handshake, his smile tight. "Marcus told us you live nearby," he said, already looking at the menu. "Yes," I said softly. "Just a small apartment. Old but comfortable." Veronica's eyes flicked over my outfit. "That's admirable," she said. "I always tell Simone it's not about money, it's about simplicity." Simone laughed lightly, a sound rehearsed for polite company. "Yes, Mom. You're right." But I could feel it, the undercurrent of judgment beneath their words. The way Veronica's gaze lingered a little too long on my tote bag, the way Simone avoided meeting my eyes. The waiter approached with a polite smile. "Good evening. May I take your order?" Veronica spoke first. "We'll have the chef's tasting menu. And a bottle of Chateau Margaux." She turned to me. "Hilda, dear, you don't mind sharing, do you?" I smiled. "Oh, anything is fine with me." Inside, I was taking notes. Every tone, every gesture. Because this dinner wasn't just a meal. It was an examination. And they didn't realize the one being tested was them. Subtle insults. As the dishes arrived, tiny, beautiful works of art that barely filled a spoon. The conversation turned to travel, careers, and family. Veronica talked about her social club, Franklin about his business ventures. Simone bragged about her upcoming fashion collaboration. And then, inevitably, Marcus spoke about his promotion. "I'm handling clients in Singapore now," he said proudly. "It's been a big step for me." "That's wonderful," Veronica said, raising her glass. "You must have gotten your ambition from your father." Marcus smiled awkwardly. "Well, Mom always encouraged me to study hard." Veronica leaned slightly forward. "Yes, I heard you worked in an office, Hilda. Must be tiring at your age." "It can be," I said with a gentle nod. "But I manage." Simone quickly changed the topic. "Mom, tell them about your villa in France." They spoke about yachts, vacations, private schools, a world I knew too well, yet pretended to find foreign. I nodded politely, sipping water, my mind drifting to all the times I had sat at such tables for business meetings, negotiating with people who looked just like them. I had thought I'd left that world behind. Tonight, it had found me again. Only this time, I was invisible. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to the restroom. As I returned, I passed close enough to hear Simone whisper to Marcus, "You should have told her not to wear that. It's embarrassing." My footsteps faltered. The words hit like a slap, but I kept walking, pretending I hadn't heard. When I sat back down, Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. Veronica smiled again, that tight, polished smile. "Everything all right, dear?" "Yes," I said softly. "Everything's perfect." Inside, something cold and strong was forming. Not anger, not yet, but the calm before the storm. A twist of fate. And then, just as dessert was served, fate decided to play its hand. Across the restaurant, a man in his 50s approached our table. Tall, confident, wearing a navy blazer. His eyes lit up the moment he saw me. "Hilda Reynolds," he exclaimed. "I can't believe it. It's been years." Everyone at the table turned. I smiled. "Mr. Davenport." "What a surprise." He laughed, shaking my hand firmly. "Surprise? You were my mentor at the firm. This woman," he said, turning to the stunned group, "is a legend. She practically built the Asian division of the company. Half of what I know about business, I learned from her." The table fell silent. Simone's fork froze midair. Veronica blinked. Marcus's mouth opened slightly. Mr. Davenport continued, oblivious to the tension. "We still talk about you at the headquarters. Last I heard, you were consulting for the European branch. Are you back full-time now?" I smiled modestly. "Just visiting for now." He laughed, still as humble as ever. "Folks, you're dining with one of the sharpest executives in the industry. Don't let her modesty fool you." And with that, he left, waving goodbye. When he was gone, the silence at the table was deafening. The sound of clinking cutlery from nearby tables filled the void. Simone was pale. Veronica forced a smile that trembled at the edges. Franklin cleared his throat. Marcus stared at me, his face a mix of confusion and guilt. "Mom, you never told me." I looked at him, my voice calm but heavy with meaning. "You never asked." Veronica tried to recover. "Well, what an interesting coincidence," she murmured. "You must have done quite well for yourself." "I've managed," I said softly. "A simple life suits me." But this time, when I said simple, my son understood what I meant. Simple doesn't mean small. It means strong enough not to need to show off. And in that moment, I saw something shift in his eyes, the beginning of realization and the sting of shame. To be continued. That night wasn't just a dinner. It was a mirror, one that showed everyone exactly who they were. What came next would shatter Marcus's world, humble Simone's family, and force them all to face the truth about love, pride, and respect. When I left the restaurant that night, the cool evening air hit my face like a wave of truth. I had gone there as a test, a quiet experiment to see how my son and his wife's family would treat someone they believed was beneath them. And though I had planned every detail, I never imagined how deeply it would hurt to watch my son's discomfort with who he thought I was. Still, I had gotten my answer. People show their true faces not when they are kind to equals, but when they think no one important is watching. The ride home. The taxi driver asked, "Long night, ma'am?" I smiled faintly at his reflection in the mirror. You could say that. As the city lights blurred past the window, my mind replayed the night in slow motion. Simone's forced smiles, Veronica's polished condescension, Marcus's nervous glances. And then, the shock in their eyes when Mr. Davenport recognized me, when the lie they'd all believed came crashing down. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication, but all I felt was sadness. Because beneath the layers of pride, judgment, and embarrassment, there was something far worse, distance. A distance between a mother and her son that no amount of money could bridge. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the darkness, listening to the silence. And for the first time in years, I cried. Quietly, bitterly, like a child who had been forgotten by the very person she had raised. The phone rang early. "Mom." Marcus's voice came through, hesitant, cautious. "Can I come over?" I almost said no. I almost wanted him to sit with his guilt for a few days. But then I thought of the boy who used to fall asleep on my lap while I read him bedtime stories. The boy who believed his mother could fix everything. "Yes," I said softly. "Come by." He arrived 30 minutes later, wearing the same expression he used to have after breaking something as a child, the mix of fear and regret. When I opened the door, he looked around my apartment as if seeing it for the first time. "Mom," he began, "why didn't you tell me?" I gestured for him to sit. "Because it wasn't necessary." He frowned. "Not necessary? You've been your rich, powerful all this time?" "Successful," I corrected him gently. "Not rich. Success and wealth aren't the same." He looked down. I thought you worked a normal job." "Simone's parents." I stopped him. "Simone's parents judged me before I even said hello. And you let them." He flinched. "I didn't mean to, Mom. I just didn't want them to." "To what?" I interrupted quietly. "To think less of you because your mother doesn't wear diamonds." He said nothing. His silence told me everything. Flashback, the cost of silence. As he sat there, I remembered the early years, when I worked 16-hour days while raising him alone. I remembered sneaking into his room at night just to watch him sleep. I remembered the small hands that clutched mine on his first day of school, the tears, the promises. I never told him how many nights I stayed awake worrying about money, about stability, about giving him a better future. And when I finally succeeded, I decided he would never carry the weight of my work. He would just live freely, comfortably. I didn't realize that in protecting him from my struggles, I had also hidden my strength. Now he looked at me like I was a stranger. And maybe in a way I was. 2 days later, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Simone. She arrived without Marcus, standing at my door in her elegant white blouse and heels. She looked uncomfortable, holding a small bouquet of flowers. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said softly. I wanted to apologize. I let her in, offering tea. "You don't owe me anything, Simone." Her eyes filled with guilt. "Yes, I do. The way my parents treated you, the way I acted, it was wrong." I nodded. "You were raised to think appearances define worth. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to change it." She looked down, tears threatening. "Your son loves you. He's ashamed of what happened." "I know," I said, "but shame isn't enough. Growth is." She looked up then, her voice trembling. "When Mr. Davenport spoke about you, I realized I've never accomplished even a fraction of what you have. And yet, you sat there quietly, letting us talk like fools." I smiled faintly. Sometimes silence is the loudest lesson. The turning point. That weekend, Marcus invited me to lunch, this time at his house. When I arrived, I noticed something different. The table was simple, the food home-cooked. No fancy restaurant, no expensive wine, no designer performance. Simone greeted me with genuine warmth. Marcus seemed nervous but hopeful. During the meal, he reached across the table. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking. All my life, you've given me everything. I thought I was protecting you from embarrassment, but really, I was embarrassed of what I didn't understand." I looked at him, my son, grown and still learning. "And what is it that you understand now?" He swallowed hard. "That humility doesn't mean weakness. That wealth doesn't need to be seen to be real. And that I owe you more respect than I ever showed." Simone added softly, "And I owe you gratitude for raising a man who still has the chance to learn." For the first time in days, I smiled. Then maybe this dinner will taste better than the last. We laughed, not loudly, not joyfully, but with relief. The kind that comes when the air finally clears after a storm. But peace never lasts long when pride is involved. 3 days later, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Hilda Reynolds?" "Yes. This is Veronica, Simone's mother." Her tone was formal, icy. "I'd like to meet with you privately." I hesitated. "Regarding what?" "A misunderstanding," she said quickly. "I believe we should clear the air." I could hear the faint tremor in her voice, the tone of a woman who had realized she'd misjudged someone important. "Of course," I replied. "When and where?" "Tomorrow. The same restaurant." The meeting. The next day, I didn't wear the wrinkled dress. I wore a black tailored suit, understated but elegant. My hair was neatly tied, my posture calm. When I entered Le Magnifique again, the same doorman greeted me, but this time with recognition. "Good evening, Mrs. Reynolds." Veronica was already seated. When she saw me, her face tightened slightly, respect and discomfort battling within her. "Hilda," she began, "I wanted to apologize for how we treated you the other night. It was uncalled for." I nodded. "It was honest. You reacted to what you saw. That's human." She sighed. "Still, we misjudged you. I suppose Marcus should have told us." I looked at her steadily. "He didn't owe you my resume, Veronica. But you did owe me basic courtesy." She shifted uncomfortably. "You're right. And I'm sorry. It's just, we move in circles where status matters. And that," I said softly, "is why people like you rarely see people like me, until it's too late." She blinked, unsure how to respond. After a long pause, she whispered, "You're different from what I expected." "So are you," I said. "But the difference is, I don't hold it against you." Something in her eyes softened. "Simone is lucky to have you as a mother-in-law." I smiled faintly. Let's hope she realizes that before I'm gone. The private revelation. Before I left, I leaned in slightly. "Veronica, can I tell you something?" "Of course. I've sat at tables far grander than this. I've negotiated with CEOs who owned empires. And do you know what I learned?" She tilted her head. "That money doesn't change who you are, it only amplifies it. If you're kind, wealth makes you generous. If you're cruel, it makes you arrogant." Her eyes dropped to the tablecloth. "I understand." "Good," I said gently. "Because your daughter deserves a future where she learns that lesson too." Weeks passed. Marcus began visiting more often, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just sitting with me in silence. He didn't talk much at first. He just showed up. One evening, he came holding an old photo album. "Remember this?" he said, flipping through pictures of him as a child. "You used to make me smile for every photo. I thought you were just being strict." I laughed softly. "I was making sure you didn't forget how to be happy." He looked up. "You never forgot how, did you?" I hesitated. "No, but I forgot how to be proud of myself without feeling guilty." He reached across the table. "Then let me be proud of you now." That moment, that quiet, trembling moment, was worth more than any paycheck I had ever earned. The real dinner. A month later, Marcus invited me to another dinner. This time, a family gathering to celebrate something important. When I arrived, everyone was there, Simone, her parents, even Mr. Davenport, who had apparently been invited as a guest of honor. Marcus stood up and cleared his throat. "I wanted to thank everyone for coming, especially my mother, who taught me that real success isn't what people see, it's what we build in silence." The room was quiet. All eyes turned to me. Veronica raised her glass. "To Hilda, for reminding us that simplicity can carry more power than luxury." I smiled, humbled. "To family," I said softly. "May we learn to see each other for who we truly are, not what we appear to be." As the glasses clinked, I caught Marcus's eye. He smiled, not out of guilt this time, but gratitude. And in that smile, I saw forgiveness, Not just from him, but from life itself. After that night, the dinner where Marcus finally looked at me not as an embarrassment, but as his mother, I thought life would return to peace. For a while it did. Days passed gently. The silence of my apartment no longer felt heavy, but comforting. I'd wake up early, make my coffee, open the curtains, and feel sunlight touch the walls. For the first time in years, I felt proud not just of what I had accomplished, but of what I had endured. But peace is fragile. It trembles at the faintest ripple. And mine was about to be tested once again. This time, not by judgment, but by exposure. The unexpected email. It began with an email from the company's HR department. Subject line: Invitation, Executive Women's Leadership Forum 2025. I hadn't attended a public corporate event in almost 2 years. I'd been consulting quietly, preferring to stay in the background. But this invitation was different. It came personally from the CEO, a woman I had once mentored. "We'd be honored if you could speak, Hilda. Your story deserves to be heard by the next generation." I hesitated. For so long, I had lived behind the curtain, invisible, content in my silence. But maybe, I thought, it was time to step into the light again. I replied yes. I didn't realize that one yes would pull my hidden world right into my son's. The forum. The event was held at a grand convention hall, filled with executives, journalists, and young professionals. When I arrived, cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and names were called out like royalty. And then I heard it, my own. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Hilda Reynolds, Senior Executive, former Director of Global Strategy, and one of the most influential women in corporate leadership." Applause filled the hall. As I stepped onto the stage, I scanned the crowd. Faces looked up with admiration, curiosity, respect. For a moment, I thought, this is enough. This recognition, this acknowledgement of a life's work. But then I noticed something unexpected. Near the back, standing quietly with a stunned expression, was Marcus. I took a deep breath and began. When I started in this industry, I was told I'd never make it far. That I was too quiet, too polite, too ordinary. But silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom waiting for its moment to speak. I learned that power isn't about what you own or how loudly you can demand attention. Real power is the ability to walk into a room and change its temperature without saying a word. As I spoke, my voice didn't shake. I saw Marcus watching, eyes wide, full of realization. And I felt something inside me shift, the invisible thread between us tightening once more. When the applause ended, people stood, clapping, smiling. But Marcus didn't move. He just stared, as if he were seeing me for the first time. The public reveal. After the speech, journalists crowded around. Cameras flashed. The next morning, every business headline carried my name. The hidden titan, Hilda Reynolds, the woman who built an empire in silence. Photos of me at the event flooded social media. Articles spoke of my career, my leadership, my legacy. And inevitably, they mentioned my family. Within hours, people discovered that Marcus, a mid-level manager in the same industry, was my son. Suddenly, his inbox exploded with messages. Colleagues congratulated him. Some mocked him. Some said, "You didn't tell us your mother's a legend." At first, he was proud. Then the guilt came rushing back. He called me that evening. "Mom," he said breathlessly, "everyone's talking about you. My boss, my clients, they all read the article. I had no idea you were that important." "I'm not important," I replied softly. "I just worked hard." He hesitated. "Can we talk in person?" The visit, part 2. When he arrived, he looked overwhelmed. "Mom, I owe you another apology. I thought the dinner humbled me, but seeing all this, reading what you've done, I realized I never really knew you." I smiled. That's the beauty of life, Marcus. There's always more to learn, even about the people we love. He sat down, rubbing his temples. "Everyone at work keeps asking why I never mention you. They think I was trying to hide it." "Were you?" I asked gently. He looked at me, guilt flooding his eyes. Maybe part of me was afraid of comparison. Afraid of not measuring up. I leaned forward. "Marcus, I didn't build my life so you could stand in my shadow. I built it so you could have light of your own." He swallowed hard. "I know that now." Simone's reaction. Simone, meanwhile, handled the news differently. When she saw the headlines, she called me almost immediately. "Oh my God, Hilda," she said, half laughing, half crying. "I had no idea you were that Hilda Reynolds. The one in Forbes. Why didn't you tell us?" "Would you have listened if I had?" I asked calmly. She paused. "Probably not." I would have thought you were exaggerating. We both laughed. For the first time, it wasn't awkward or forced. Later, she confessed, "My mother's been talking about you nonstop. She says she wants to meet you again, properly this time." I smiled faintly. Let her. I believe in second chances. A week later, Veronica invited me to tea. When I arrived, she looked nothing like the proud woman from the restaurant. Her tone was softer, her eyes gentler. "Hilda," she began, "I've been reading about your work. The scholarships you funded, the mentorship programs, the charities. I didn't know you were doing all that." "I didn't do it for attention," I said. She nodded. "I can see that now. You've inspired me, honestly, to change the way I see people." For a moment, silence filled the air between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that heals. "Simone told me you forgave Marcus," she said softly. "I did," I replied, "because forgiveness is the only currency that doesn't lose value." Veronica smiled faintly. "I hope someday I earn yours too." "You already have," I said, "by realizing what truly matters." The corporate offer. A few days later, I received another call, this time from the CEO herself. "Hilda, after your speech, the board wants you to come back. We're launching a global mentorship program. You'd lead it. Think about it." I hesitated. For years, I'd lived quietly, enjoying the peace of anonymity. But something about this offer felt right, as if life was giving me one final chapter to write. "All right," I said, "on one condition. Anything. I don't want fame. I want purpose." She laughed softly. "That's exactly why we need you." Marcus's moment. A month later, Marcus invited me to his office. He looked nervous but proud. "I wanted to show you something," he said, handing me a proposal. At the top it read, "Employee Development Initiative, inspired by Hilda Reynolds." I blinked. "You wrote this?" He nodded. "After everything that happened, I realized I want to build something that reflects your values. Equality, mentorship, compassion. I want to change the way our company sees people." I smiled, tears rising. "Marcus, that's the best thing you've ever given me." He grinned shyly. "Well, you gave me the blueprint." The gala. 3 months later, the company held a gala to celebrate the launch of the new program. Executives, philanthropists, and media were there. Veronica and Franklin attended too, this time by invitation, not out of obligation. When Marcus took the stage to speak, he said, "I used to think success was about who noticed you. But then I learned from my mother that real success is about who you help when no one's watching." The applause was thunderous. Simone looked at him with pride. Veronica's eyes shone with tears. And me, I just sat there quietly, smiling. Because that was all I had ever wanted. The quiet ending. After the gala, Marcus came to me, holding my hand tightly. "Mom, I finally understand why you lived the way you did. Why you stayed simple, even when you didn't have to." I squeezed his hand. Because simplicity keeps you grounded. And when life takes everything else, it's the one thing that remains. He nodded. I used to be embarrassed by that word, simple. Now it's the most powerful word I know. I smiled, tears welling in my eyes. Then you've learned the lesson I spent a lifetime trying to teach. The restaurant incident spread faster than I imagined. Not through the tabloids or the news, but through whispers, guilt, and silence. Sometimes, silence carries a louder echo than 1,000 voices. That night, when I left the restaurant, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The faces of my son, his wife, and her parents were engraved in my memory, frozen between shock and shame. The same people who had looked down on me hours earlier now couldn't even meet my eyes. I went home quietly, took off my wrinkled dress, hung it on the back of the chair, and sat in the dark. No tears came. No anger. Just a heavy, hollow stillness. The kind that only a mother can feel when she realizes her child has grown into someone she barely recognizes. For 2 days, there was nothing but silence. No calls. No messages. No apologies. But on the 3rd night, my doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. Marcus stood there, eyes red, hands shaking slightly, like a boy who had just been caught stealing. Behind him, Simone hovered nervously, her perfect hair tied back, her lips pressed tight. "Mom," Marcus began, his voice cracking. I stepped aside silently. They walked in. The apartment looked smaller now, maybe because the truth had finally filled it. He stood there, searching for words. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I just wanted them to respect me. Simone's parents, they can be judgmental. I thought if they knew you weren't." "Weren't what?" I asked softly. He swallowed hard. Weren't rich, weren't successful. I didn't think it mattered. I just wanted to keep things simple. I smiled sadly. You mean you didn't want them to see where you came from? You thought pretending I was less than I am would make you more. He lowered his head. Simone finally spoke. Mrs. Hilda, I'm sorry for how my parents behaved. I'm ashamed. They shouldn't have. I raised a hand gently. No, dear. Don't apologize for them. They only revealed what was already inside them. The real disappointment isn't your parents. It's my son. Marcus winced. Mom, please don't say that. You don't understand the pressure. Pressure? I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. Pressure to be loved? To be respected? Marcus, I built my entire career under pressure. I've signed deals with people who would destroy others for $1, and yet I never had to hide who I was. But you hid me. Not because I was poor, but because I was ordinary in your eyes. He sat down, defeated. I was scared, he whispered. Scared they'd judge me for not coming from money, for having a simple mother. I didn't know how to explain that you were more than that. I sighed deeply. You didn't have to explain. You just had to be proud. A man who hides his mother's truth will one day be ashamed of his own. The room went quiet again. Outside, the city lights flickered through the window, cold, distant, indifferent. Simone's voice trembled. I want to make things right. Please, let us try. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her perfection. The guilt, the regret, the silent realization that money and status can't protect you from humiliation. Simone, I said gently, do you love my son? She nodded quickly. Yes, more than anything. Then teach him what love really means. It means standing beside someone, not above them. Marcus's shoulders shook. Mom, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I looked at him quietly. Maybe not today, but one day you will, when you learn what true respect means. A week passed. I returned to work as usual. My colleagues greeted me warmly, unaware of the emotional storm I'd endured. But life, as it always does, moved on. Except for Marcus, for him, time had stopped. He began visiting more often. Not to talk, but just to sit. Sometimes he'd fix the loose kitchen shelf, or water the plants I'd forgotten. He was trying in his own silent way. One evening, as I cooked, he asked, Why didn't you ever tell me, Mom? About the money, your job, everything? I paused, stirring the soup slowly. Because I wanted you to see value in people, not price tags. I wanted you to know that respect shouldn't depend on income. I didn't want to raise a man who measured others by their wealth. He stared at me for a long moment, then said quietly, Then I failed you. I smiled faintly. No, Marcus. You stumbled. We all do. What matters is that you're standing again. Days turned into weeks. Simone's parents tried to reach out, flowers, gifts, apology letters. I accepted none. Not out of revenge, but because some lessons must be earned, not bought. Then one Saturday morning, Marcus came by again, holding a box. Mom, he said, I want you to see something. Inside the box was a framed photo, the one from years ago when he graduated college. His arm around me, both of us smiling, unaware of the storms ahead. I realized, he said softly, that every good thing in my life started because of you. And I almost threw that away because I cared what others thought. I reached out and touched his cheek. You didn't lose me, Marcus. You just forgot who I was. But now you remember. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I do. And I'll never forget again. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights shimmer like scattered diamonds. I thought about all the years I'd hidden my success, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the quiet victories. I thought about the little boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street, now a grown man learning humility the hard way. And for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. Forgiveness isn't about erasing pain. It's about freeing yourself from it. And I realized my silence wasn't weakness. It was strength, because true dignity doesn't need applause. It only needs truth. You came into my life when I had nothing but hope. No wealth, no comfort, no certainty, just dreams and a fierce desire to give you more than I ever had. I worked days and nights so you could go to the schools I couldn't, wear the clothes I couldn't afford, and live the life I could only imagine. Every success I achieved was meant to build your world higher. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. You mistook my simplicity for failure, my silence for insignificance, my modest home for mediocrity. And that hurt more than you'll ever know. You see, Marcus, I never wanted to hide my achievements from you. I hid them because I didn't want money to become your compass. I wanted kindness to guide you. I wanted you to see people, not their wallets. I wanted you to understand that respect isn't earned by what we own, but by who we are when no one is watching. The night at the restaurant broke something in me, but it also opened my eyes. It showed me that even the children we love the most can forget where they came from when they start chasing approval. It showed me that sometimes love must step back to be seen. When you looked at me that night, ashamed to call me your mother, I saw a boy still trapped in the fear of not being enough. You wanted so badly to be accepted that you forgot. You already were. You were mine. That was always enough. But that night also changed you. I saw it in your eyes afterward. The guilt, the regret, the silent apology you didn't know how to give. And when you came back, helping with small things, sitting in silence beside me, I saw the man I raised reemerging. Do you know what forgiveness feels like, Marcus? It's like watching the sunrise after the longest night. It doesn't erase the darkness, but it reminds you that light always returns. So yes, my son, I forgive you. Not because you asked for it, but because my heart couldn't live without peace. I forgive you because love that holds grudges isn't love. It's pride dressed in pain. And I've lived long enough to know that pride destroys more than poverty ever could. I paused, letting the ink dry. Then I continued. You once asked me, why didn't you ever move to a bigger house, Mom? You could afford it. Here's my answer. Because a house doesn't make a home, people do. And I refused to build walls that would make me forget the struggle that made me who I am. I stayed humble, not because I was afraid of luxury, but because I was afraid of losing gratitude. Gratitude, Marcus, is what keeps us human when success tries to turn us into statues. Remember this, money can buy comfort but not character. It can buy company but not connection. It can build a mansion but not a home. If you want to live a good life, truly good, fill your days with honesty, not appearances. Be the man who treats a waiter with the same respect as a CEO. Be the husband who stands beside his wife when life stops being perfect. Be the son who never forgets the hands that once held him steady when he couldn't walk. And when people ask about your mother, don't say, she worked in an office. Say, she built an empire quietly with grace, and she taught me what dignity really means. Because that's who I am, Marcus. Not a title, not a paycheck, just a woman who fought quietly for everything she has, and who loved you more than words can say. I placed the pen down and looked at the finished letter. The paper carried small smudges, tiny teardrops that fell without permission. Not from sadness, but from relief. I folded the letter neatly and slipped it into an envelope. On the front, I wrote one simple word. For Marcus. Weeks passed before I gave it to him. We met at his home, a small dinner, just the three of us. No expensive restaurants, no suits, no pretending. Just laughter, warmth, and honesty. Simone cooked, simple food, the kind that brings people together. She had changed too. There was softness in her eyes now, humility in her voice. After dinner, as they walked me to the door, I handed Marcus the envelope. What's this? He asked. A letter, I said. Read it when you're ready. He smiled faintly, but his eyes shimmered. I don't need a letter to know how much you love me, Mom. I touched his cheek. Maybe not, but sometimes written words remind us of what spoken ones forget. That night, he called me hours later, his voice thick with emotion. Mom, I just finished reading it, he whispered. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Marcus, I replied softly. Just live it. There was silence, the kind that heals. And then he said something I'll never forget. Mom, I want to be the kind of person you'd be proud to introduce, not because of what I have, but because of who I am. My throat tightened. I already am proud, I whispered. You just took a while to come home. Years later, when people spoke of me at retirement, they mentioned my achievements, the contracts I signed, the empire I helped build. But those weren't my real trophies. My real victory was that letter, and the man my son became after reading it. Marcus and Simone learned to live differently. They started a small foundation for underprivileged kids, teaching them skills, helping them dream beyond their limits. Every time I saw a photo of Marcus kneeling beside those children, smiling, I saw my letter living through him. And that, my dear, is all a mother ever wants. Not perfection, not wealth, but legacy. A legacy of love, of humility, of truth. Sometimes, when I sit by my window at night, I imagine the little boy Marcus once was, running to me with scraped knees, crying and whispering, "Don't be mad, Mom." And I smile because I finally understand. He never stopped being that boy. And I never stopped being his mother.